Welcome to The Leading Edge, Developing Officers for Command. I'm Senior Master Sergeant Eugene Christ from your 130th Public Affairs. Now let's get to the content.
Hey, good morning, folks. Thank you again for coming. Like I said last time, I wasn't going to hit you back to back with these pre-command officer force development sessions. Gave you a month break, but we're back again here in October, and I'm mixing things up a little bit, mostly because there's some really important things coming down the pike, and it's important to share this information with you because it has a lot of ramifications, not only to how we deploy, but how we're going to do business here at home station eventually. It has ramifications for how we train, how we conduct exercises. It has ramifications for force development and force management. So sharing information about the new Deployable Combat Wing structure as well as the A-staff construct is incredibly important. The really key thing about the information that Lieutenant Colonel Dumrongkietiman is going to share with you here today is a lot of this is still in a little bit of flux. We do not have definitive answers to all the questions here today. We don't have all the information necessary in order to really move forward with full confidence in how this is going to look as we go into this next year. Nevertheless, it's coming quick. And the reason why it's coming quick all has to do with great power competition. It all has to do with our leaders' perceptions that we need to reorganize as an Air Force in how we fight wars. We have been, essentially fighting for 20 years, a war on terror. We organized ourselves efficiently to operate in that environment, and now things are changing. Thus, we need to change. We need to be responsive to that change, and our leaders are asking us to do it really fast. They're talking about implementing this in the spring. That's monumental change. Historically, what we would typically see is they would roll out these types of initiatives in a much more thoughtful way, more methodical way. They'd have test wings that are out there, which they have some of those now, but they would spend time analyzing this from an organizational perspective, refine it, etc. But we're very much going to be continuing to finish building the jet while we fly it when it comes to this. Thus, I do anticipate things to change even once this gets implemented. And I expect that we will need to be responsive to that moving forward. But bottom line is, wing leadership, we felt it was important for you all to see this information today. I ask especially for our captains and majors in the room to pay particular attention to the A-staff elements in this, and to see how you might be able to fit into this construct. Because this could be a great force management opportunity for you, a great development opportunity for you in order to broaden your horizons outside your squadron, to work at the wing level, to work for the wing commander, and really to do something a little different. So please pay close attention to those parts and pieces. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Vic. Vic is our Wing Chief of Staff, newly assigned in that role. He's doing a great job, off to a really good start. Really appreciate him taking the lead on this particular block today. Vic?
Thank you, sir. Now, good morning, everyone. Little things up front. Everything here, again, is pre-decisional and for discussion and awareness only. Today, I'll be going over the Deployable Combat Wing and the Air Staff, starting with the Deployable Combat Wing. I'll go a little bit over the why, a little bit overview, and the Air National Guard Combat Wing structure. As Colonel said, we're re-optimizing for the great power competition. This requires us to establish units of action designed for rapid deployment. These units of action are deployable combat wings, in-place combat wings, and combat generation wings. So what we're used to, for the past 20-some years, we've been deploying to these established bases in the middle of the desert. You can see here, everything's built up. We have everything ready to go when we get there. What we're preparing for is these bare bases in the middle of the ocean. You can see here, not a lot there. We've been crowdsourcing the war, taking airmen from all over the United States and sending them to the deployed location. The plan going forward is to have these cohesive deployable combat wings mobilize and go over to these main operating bases with the intent that they'll fraction out to these forward operating sites or these contingency locations. So what is the DCW? It's the unit of action that the Air Force presents to the combatant commanders. It is designed to be the Air Force's ability to deploy and operate as a cohesive unit. Each DCW includes a command element, a mission element, and a sustainment element. The mission element includes airlift squadron, your maintenance support, and your combat support. Your sustainment element is the element that's responsible for base operational support. Again, these units are designed to deploy as a whole unit and adapt as needed.
So let me just talk about that real quick. So designed to deploy as a whole unit or adapt as needed. So how do we train and prepare for REVs now today? We do it as a wing, right? So to be able to do this really reinforces a lot of the ways that we train today. In essence, a lot of that training and how we have deployed under the war on terror, where it's piecemeal, we cobbled units together, et cetera, we never really trained that way. This is a lot more, in my opinion, holistic to how we've been doing business, really for a long time. Go ahead, Vic.
All right, the Air Force's goal is to have 24 units of action. That's 6 per AFRIGEN phase. For the Air National Guard support, that's going to be 4 DCWs per cycle. But to get to those 4 combat wings, we have to have 2 or 8 wings because we're using 2 to make 1. Again, for the deployable combat wing, that's 2 Air National Guard wings to make 1. And when the DCW deploy, we'll have an air base unit that remains home station that supplies your base operational support, your domestic operational support, or any other missions we have going on at home station. Go ahead.
Do we have any inkling of an idea of what sister unit we get paired with?
Not at the moment. Currently, they're talking about pairing unlike units, so we could be paired with a fighter unit.
In that instance, with it being a commander and a DCOM S and DCOM O, like, is there only one like that to cover both of those units, or is each unit going to have?
I'll show you here in a minute. Ahead of you on that one.
One thing to talk about this too, again, I'm old enough that I've been around to see things come through in cycles. When you look at when I was a young airman, and this was the 130th Tactical Airlift Group, we were paired with 2 other groups in order to form a wing. This organization was partnered with Oklahoma City and Savannah, and we actually had a wing commander in Oklahoma City who was a brigadier general that we reported through. So it was a little different, certainly, than what we see today. Being paired with a fighter wing obviously would be, kind of new for us, but being aligned with another wing that we're going to deploy with in the future is not all that different than what we used to do in the past. So it's interesting, again, when you're around long enough, you see things come back around again. So there are some elements to this that are not different than what we've seen in the past, and I'll talk about more when we get into the A-staff side. But certainly the A-staff and how it will be implemented within the wing is significantly different than what we've seen before. Go ahead.
Okay. Those 2 wings that are paired together, they will be preparing and training and certifying together. You can expect a 6-month deployment with 30% swap out halfway in between. All right, what you see here is the current concept for the Air National Guard Combat Wing. And what they're envisioning right now is 1 base, 1 wing. So that deployable combat wing with an attached air base unit. And that air base unit is your people who stay behind when that DCW forward deploys OCONUS. Again, each deployable combat wing has a command element, a mission element, and a sustainment element. You can see here in the DCW, you have your wing commander, your deputy commander for operations, deputy commander for sustainment, which is a change from what we've been doing in the past with one deputy commander. And then, of course, you have your chief, your first sergeant, and the ace staff and special staff, as mentioned before. Then you have your mission generation force element in the mission section. And that's again, your airlift squadron, your maintenance, your combat support. And then each deployable combat wing will have your mission support teams, which is your organic operations, sustainment protection, and then combat air base squadron, which is the base support, air ops flight, sustainment, protection flight. So I know these kind of two teams very similar, but the purpose of the MST is for when that MGFE, should it forward deploy, they go with them. So anywhere the mission generation force element goes, the mission sustainment team goes with them. And then again, on the air base unit, these are your stay behind elements. It has its own air staff. Though it'll be a lot smaller air staff, probably focusing on A5 plans, stuff like that. Then you have its own special staff and your base support elements, including CE, force support, maintenance, medical, and all that, security forces. Any questions before we move on to this one?
To kind of answer what you asked, the intent would be essentially each wing would have a DCO and DCS. Mm-hmm. And when they deploy, though, only one is going to go from each of the two wings. Mm-hmm. So the other one would be, would stay back. Another thing I'll point out here is if you look at where, for example, 06s go, if you think, well, the ops group commander may be the DCOM O, maybe the maintenance group commander, the DCOM S, maybe the mission support group commander to command the air base unit. Obviously, medical is going to be there. What 06 is out of the mix? Okay? So when we talk about this, and I talk about being responsive to change, this is my task here, is to understand that this new structure really changes for me greatly, personally. But again, this is what our leadership envisions to be the most efficient way to fight, the way that we need to position ourselves to respond to great power competition. And I'm here to embrace it, even if that means I'm going to be out of a job in the future. So it's very different. Go ahead, Vic.
Yes, sir. All right. Again, during the prepare and certify phase, those two wings will be trained together and preparing and certifying together. So when we come to the available phase and we're deploying, as we was talking about before, you have pieces from each wing going to create that deployable combat wing there in the middle. So in this example here, the wing base B has their wing commander going over to support the deployable combat wing, while the deputy commander for operations is taken from wing A. Similarly, the command chief is coming from the wing A, while the first sergeant from wing B. What you'll notice here is the mission generation force elements from both wings are going to support that combat wing. And this includes their MST teams, or MSTs, and the combat air base squadrons. So does this help kind of answer the question there?
Yes, sir.
Yep. And then again, their air base units will stay behind and support the base, along with any remaining ops or support packages that are left behind. So we will have, a good amount of people back to, support any kind of flooding or anything else that comes up. All right, we have here an example of what a mission sustainment team will look like. Again, these teams are providing sustainment, protection, and airfield management operations. And again, they're assigned to the MGFEs, the mission generation force elements, and they go wherever they go. So you can see here that they have maintained the forward operating site function here, and that's your CE personnel, logistics personnel, communications, force support, medical, and security, and your airfield operations. Anybody got any questions about mission support teams? Okay.
I'll just kind of give an analogy. In maintenance, when maintenance historically deploys, what do you work under? The AMU concept, right? In a lot of ways, this is just like that. Like you're going to pull these specialties from the various squadrons, et cetera, to create this mission support team. So it's very much like an AMU, if you will.
Thank you, sir. All right, this is an example of your Combat Air Base Squadron. Again, this is your primary base operating support and protection. Just like the MST, they have a maintain the base function, which is a lot of your CE functions. A maintain the force is all your FSS functions. And then communication, logistics, base defense, medical, and airfield operations. Again, look, this is a much bigger package because it's designed to maintain the main operating base that we're operating from. Anybody got any questions about the Deployed Combat Wing before we move on to the A-Staff?
One thing I'll highlight is I would expect a lot of the details of what he just showed you to change over time. So just, again, look at this as pre-decisional, strictly to introduce you to these concepts, but I do expect there to be change to those details. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. All right, for the Air Staff, we're going to go over some answers to some typical questions. The Squadron Commander relationship with the A Staff, we're going through a quick scenario, talk about how we're going to move forward, and then depending on how much time we have left, we'll go over the detailed roles and responsibilities. So the A Staff is primary body providing decision support to the Wing Commander. It consists of the Chief of Staff, the Deputy Chief of Staff, the A1, which is your manpower, personnel, and resource services, the A2, which is intelligence, A3 is your operations, A4 is maintenance, logistics, and engineering, A5 is your plans and programs, and A6 is your communications. So what you see here is what's on our current UMD, our unit manning document that was laid in for us. The Guard Bureau laid in 20 positions for us so that we can keep up with the Reg AF. Again, this is not the final structure. This is all pre-decisional. Look for some positions that may be added or changed or reduced, or maybe even some ranks to be changed. You can see here we have a large task ahead of us to fill these 20 vacant positions. The unvacant positions are the ones that kind of rolled over with the from the previous UMD to the current one, and that includes your wing plans and your command post functions.
I just add, I can't help myself.
Okay.
This is so interesting. Just look at the ranks that are up here. So most of your A staff directors are majors. It's a big challenge. One of the things, typically when you talk about elements such as maintenance, and I apologize, I don't know what example he's going to show you. I hope I haven't stolen your thunder.
Okay.
But I'll talk about where aircraft maintenance fits into this. Generally speaking, that A4, look at the AFSC for the A4, if you can read it. It's a 21R, which is logistics. When you go down in that chain and you look at the A4M position, essentially within this construct, of course, we do anticipate the A4M to be an officer, the actual A4M. That billet is likely to be a major, but if you read the description that's been prepared for that A4M, it's a lot of the responsibilities the maintenance group commander has today. QA, the MSEP program, being the individual that's likely to sign off on things like flying with a red X in order to pre-position an aircraft somewhere. A lot of very high-level responsibilities that have historically been in 06's purview. Now you're going to have a major who's one step removed even from the chief of staff, much less the wing commander. It's going to be interesting how this plays out, from an organizational dynamic standpoint. Again, I don't have the answer. I don't know for sure. I think there's going to be challenges with this and how it's implemented. I see this as an area of potential challenge, but that's going to be a lot of responsibility for a major. A lot of responsibility. The same thing plays out with some of these other A staff director positions. If your A3 is a major, that's huge. Like, that's a lot of responsibility, because that 3 is not just flying ops. That 3 is ops. Whether it's security forces deploying, in support of a mission, whether it's a state active duty that we're supporting and providing forces to the joint staff, to a joint task force to support the state, It's ops. It's not just flying ops. So it's really different when you think about it and you get into the weeds, and a lot of tremendous responsibility for some relatively junior grades from an officer perspective and enlisted. But hey, what a great developmental opportunity that is. I'm serious. Look, I became the state's J6 as a captain. My peers were all lieutenant colonels and colonels. I was the first air officer as a joint staff director. It was hard, but I learned every day. And that knowledge that I gained and the experience that I gained while I was there has been absolutely invaluable for the rest of my career. You can do the same in this construct. So again, if you're a captain, a major, and you're looking at this, this is opportunity for you up here. This is a chance to, once you build that core foundation within your squadron, and you know your AFSC well, this is a chance for you to branch out and to do something a little bit different. Okay? Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, sir. Just to further support your point, what stands out to me is this A4 director is going to get most of those, we were talking about those group level decisions for maintenance. You're going to get a lot of that decisional information from an E7.
Yeah, potentially. Absolutely true. It's a different dynamic. You have to elevate your game. But what are we asking our multi-capable airmen to do? Same thing, right? We're asking them to broaden their skill set and to be able to operate in distributed operations in a denied environment without communications with higher headquarters. This is kind of the same thing. You're being thrust into a position of greater responsibility. You know, it's a challenge, but this is what we're asking folks to do today. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I would like to point out that you can see here that probably over 90% of these positions are drill status. There's a few unfunded techs they threw in here, including A3, A4, and A6, but these are designed to be a deployed function, not home station full-time force. That being said, when they reorganize for the deployable combat wings, that could all change. All right?
One thing too is we do have flexibility. Like it's, you know, I would bet you're going to have some full-timers sprinkled out through this. But I will say that, you know, Colonel Priest, Chief Williams, and myself really have worked hard during our tenure to make sure our drill status guardsmen have opportunities to lead, opportunities to seek promotions, et cetera, and that won't change with this.
Mm-hmm. All right, just a little background on why the A5 is a lieutenant colonel and not the A3. It's because when we had an 05 in the wing plans office already, and the National Guard Bureau just did the minimum and not possible to assign the positions. So we do have the flexibility to move the rank around to where we see fit. Also, I'd like to show that the A1, they have a radius integration element. A2 has contingency intelligence element. Operations has future operations, current operations, and they are in charge of the command post. They also have a protection element. The A4 has a civil engineering, maintenance, munitions, and a logistics readiness element. The A5 has the wing plans, and the A6 has both an operational element and a plans and policies element. Okay, sir?
Hey, Vic, how do you see, or have we gotten that far now, how with so many drill status guardsmen, how do they train and integrate as this comes online? So, because most of those get sourced from the units within the wing, right?
Yes, sir.
So what's kind of the concept, or you can get into that with your scenario?
I'll talk about it here a little bit later, but generally what the idea is right now is get the personnel assigned, and then we'll start training them per all the ASAF guidance. But also the idea is to have individuals who are already trained in their career fields so that we don't have to worry about training them in the career fields as well, because we need to be focusing on what we're going to be doing as a deployed phone.
Definitely going to be a change. It's a crawl, walk, run thing. This is coming at us quick, but it is going to change how we train. And we're going to have to provide opportunities for this A staff to get away from here and to be able to conduct operations like a flyaway exercise as an A staff with supporting ops, maintenance, logistics, and other parts and pieces associated with it. I really see our flyaways being really different than what we've done in the past. I see the makeup of entities like the CAT to be different. There's going to be a lot of change with how this is done. So time will tell. I think that's an area where we don't really see crystal clear what that's going to look like, but fundamentally it's going to be different.
And so the current way I'm envisioning training, I've already asked the Wing Plans Office to try to start piecemealing together a plan to, if we are tasked to deploy to the middle of the ocean, what we need to get there, what we need to, when we're there, to operate and all that stuff. So start working on this plan, and once we have this plan ready, we'll start exercising it, maybe over Camp Branch, and go and set up a bear base and operating all that to exercise and prepare. I mean, for the A staff, I think it's going to be a lot of exercising, especially on drill weekends, tabletops or whatever it may be, going through different scenarios. All right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just go back one slide. It's a communication and management role. It's an important role, but it's not a command role.
Yes, sir.
If I was sitting in here and I was a squadron commander, officer of maintenance, I might be thinking, well, I'm an 05 squadron commander. Am I subordinate to an A4 or an A3? The answer is no.
Correct.
You still have command over your squadron. We're still figuring out how this will work, but our squadron commanders are not losing their authority, and the way it's always been is how I intend for it to go.
Yes, sir. And I'm actually about to go over that. All right, what does A staff do? They communicate, collaborate, and coordinate. So they communicate the commander's intent. They communicate the wing's roles in operations and contingency plans. They develop the wing plans and orders. They collaborate with the units for execution of the plans and operations. They coordinate with units and organizations outside the wing. This can include wing headquarters or air headquarters, JFHQ, or maybe any host nation that will be at the deployed location that we'll be at. They secure, manage, and coordinate resources. This includes resource advocacy. So they're the primary personnel responsible for getting your resources. So if you need anything, you'll be talking to the A staff, and they'll try to work with our headquarters or whoever it may be to get what you need to execute the mission. Of course, when we get the resources, we'll be allocating it to where it needs to go. And then they regularly coordinate training and exercises and incorporate lessons learned. Anybody have any more questions on what the A staff does? Again, I'll be getting into the details of what each directorate does here later on. All right, where are we going to work? To be determined. Will likely depend on where you're assigned. For example, if you're in the command post, you're an A3 person, you'll probably be working out a command post or the CAT until we figure out a full-time or a permanent solution. Conceptually, the wing headquarters is the primary location where the A staff would do the planning and coordinating. If there's an incident, we may be working out the Emergency Operations Center or the Wing Operations Center to be that central hub for command and control. If we are assigned to a humanitarian mission for field operations or something like that, if you're a member of the A staff, you could be tasked to support the J staffs. For example, if you're the A4, you may have to go over and work with the J4 during any kind of dom ops. Similarly, the air headquarters may ask for support, and the A3 may go help out the headquarters A3, and so on. So, anybody have any questions on that? Okay.
Again, things like the National Scout Jamboree could be an opportunity to expose individuals who've not worked within a numbered staff construct to be able to get experience in things like this. So we're going to look, Richard, to your question, we're going to look for opportunities like that to do these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we were just chatting about, sort of the, I know we're being recorded, so I don't want to give the Army too much credit here, but they have a lot more experience in a number of staff organization than there's a great opportunity, I think, for that.
Yep, I agree.
Also, I can let you know up front, a lot of the JTOs that come down, the A staff will probably get most of those taskings, or at least be responsible for coordinating them. So how long is the tour? It depends. Not every person is the same. Everybody's past is different. Everybody's future is different. So the typical tour should be around 2 to 6 years. I think the preference would be to kind of align it with the 4-year averaging cycle. What happens at the end of the tour? Again, it depends. Not everybody has the same past, not the same future. Depend on career progression and where the needs of the wing and state are, and where you are in your career. But ideally, you go back to your previous location, or you go to a different position, preferably one higher than the one you left. Because these are development opportunities, so they're designed to get you to the next higher level. Who will be your supervisor? It depends on where you're assigned within the A staff. For example, if you're the wing plans officer, you work for the director of plans and programs, you're A5. If you're in the command post, of course, you work for the command post superintendent, now known as A3F. So who's your GCER's commander? That's Colonel Priest. Currently, I know there has been talk about Chief of Staff being a GCER's commander for just the purpose of the A staff, commanding the A staff.
Hey Vic, before you move on, I have a question. This is really more for Colonel Priest and Colonel Chard. But when we talk about airman development, I know we just republished, and Chief Williams republished the airman development plan. But this is going to completely change how we have to develop people as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
So have you guys had discussions about that?
We know it's going to change. And that's not the only policy that's going to have to change. Promotion policies, assignments, all kinds of things. So with the elimination of that group level command and that organizational element, it's a lot, Holly, not just force development. But yeah, so for example, historically, kind of group command was kind of the pinnacle for officer development as far as, working your way up through squadron command, a senior level staff assignment, maybe getting assigned as a deputy commander, and then becoming a group commander. That's not going to be there in the way that we know it. So I really see things like, an officer spending time initially within their squadron, they learn their job, their AFSC, they build experience, ideally with a deployment in that time frame. They move up within their squadron to gain some additional responsibilities. Perhaps they oversee a section. They have a chance to lead some airmen along the way. At some point, as a captain major, they come down to the A staff. And they work at this level. They, again, it's a communication coordination role, not a command role. Once they build time here, perhaps they go back as a squadron XO or maybe get promoted as a squadron commander. So it is going to be a little different. And, we have to understand what these new roles and responsibilities are so that we can play our part during that time that we're in those particular positions. I think if I'm a future squadron commander and I've had that type of broadening, which is something we have struggled with, how do we broaden, especially within certain stovepiped career fields? I think this is a great opportunity for people to go into squadron command with more experience, more knowledge than they've done historically. And I must say, we have to include a joint staff assignment or an assignment within state headquarters as a part of that development too. So, you might go from an A staff billet in a wing, go work a joint staff position, or you may work in state headquarters for a period of time before coming back for squadron command. Does that answer your question? Very good.
Thank you, sir. All right, now we'll talk a little bit about the difference between staff functions and line functions. And of course, your line functions are your typical squadron functions. Staff functions are planning-centric. They facilitate coordination with the parent and adjacent staff organizations. They synchronize information from multiple wing operations to support the wing commander, and they're focused on resourcing, policy, oversight, and guidance. Whereas the squadron commanders, they're focused on mission execution and expending whatever resources are given to them. Any of their actions, they all result in physical changes to the environment. Fixing aircraft, flying aircraft, serving meals, and setting up an antenna are all good examples. So your squadron commanders will serve as a primary link between the squadrons and the ASAF directorates. They will be providing regular updates to the ASAF on the squadron status to include the readiness, training progress, and the operational achievements. And they will be executing the plans developed by the ASAF for deploying their personnel and resources as needed. So the A1 will work with squadron commanders on any kind of manpower issues, include assignments and promotions. Your A2 will be working with the squadron commanders to be providing intelligence support so that they know where all the potential threats are and any situational changes. The A3 would work with the squadron commander for all training and operational missions. The A4 will liaise with the squadron commander to make sure all the maintenance and logistics needs are met so they have all the equipment and resources they need to execute their mission. The A5 will work with the squadron commanders to develop and implement the strategic plans, while the A6 will work with the squadron commander to ensure that they have all the communication systems and IT support needed to execute their mission. Any questions so far?
I'll just add, this is my personal take. Do I think a squadron is going to send a promotion request to the A1? No, I don't think that. Do I think they'll send a 2096 to the A1? No, I don't think that. I think the CSSs will be working directly with FSS for those type of actions. Will the A1 work on the development of policy, supporting promotions, assignments, etc.? Yes, in collaboration with the Force Support Squadron Commander, the A1 will work those types of initiatives. So again, you know, when you see these things, time will tell how they play out. But my own personal opinion, that's an example of how kind of a one function may work. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Like, for example, on the Joint Staff, J1, I'm sorry, I just love doing this. You know, if we're doing a full-time hiring action, we talk to HRO. We don't talk to the J1. J1 manages things like joint officer programs for joint credit and, you know, joint assignments, things like that. But again, those relationships exist already, and I see us mirroring some of those in a lot of ways.
Thank you, sir. All right, for a quick scenario, say we had a hurricane struck a neighboring state, kind of like just happened. We'd be tasked with providing immediate humanitarian assistance. So under that scenario, the A3 would receive the mission tasking and immediately coordinate with affected squadron to prepare for deployment. The squadron commander would be briefed on the mission and start beginning to mobilize his personnel and resources. The A5 would work with the squadron commander to develop a detailed mission plan that includes identifying key objectives, logistic requirements, and resources. The A4 would work with the squadron commander to ensure that the aircraft are ready to go, supplies are loaded, and maintenance and checks are completed. The A2 would work with the squadron to ensure that they are aware of all damage assessments, weather conditions, and any other potential hazards. The A3 would be monitoring the mission's progress and provide real-time support and coordination. The squadron would execute the mission, which could include search and rescue, delivering medical supplies, and support to local authorities. Of course, the A6 will make sure they have all communication systems they need. And then after the mission, the A1 would work with the squadron to ensure that assess the personnel well-being and address any issues that arise during the mission. And of course, your A5 is your lesson learned POC. Any questions on this scenario? Okay. All right, moving forward, we plan to advertise, interview, and select existing personnel for these new directorates. This requires experienced personnel again, because they're all meant to be a deployed function as early as 26 to 27. We will be advertising the deputy and director positions first, so look for those around 31st, no later than the 31st October. I hope to get them out maybe before the end of the drill, maybe the end of the week. Once the rosters are filled, we'll be training the staff members in their roles and responsibilities, which will include a lot of conducting exercises to prepare for upcoming deployments. Any questions there? Yes, sir.
First question, I've seen some manning documents that show an SEL in the EA staff. Do we have one?
Not yet, sir. Yeah, I know that.
Show an E8, maybe an E9.
Yes, sir.
So that
Yeah.
could be coming.
Yes, sir.
And then, as Colonel Chard mentioned, we always talk, Chief and Colonel Chard and I, about giving our DSGs opportunities, and that's important to us. And the A staff, we're going to give DSGs opportunities. But as you can see, if you followed along the scenarios and the briefings, you're going to need to be an active DSG. There's nothing wrong with the 1 weekend a month, drill status guardsmen. A lot of people have demanding jobs, but in these roles, if you're going to sign up for them, you've got to be prepared for those weekday calls.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, how can you prepare for an A staff assignment? You can start by understanding the A staff structure. When I send out the advertisements, I will be including some references, and I'll show you some references at the end that you can look at to kind of know the roles of each of the A staff directorates. You can also review any other regulations and policies concerning A staff, DCWs, and all that. Again, I'll be attaching some references and showing you some references later. I can work on developing some key skills to include communication, project management, and technical skills that are for your desired functional area. And you can also stay informed. Keep up with the news. Keep looking for the A staff, air staff, and the Deployable Combat Wings news in the Air Force pages and stuff like that to make sure you're up to speed on what's going on with DCWs and the air staff. All right, before I move on to the air staff, anybody got any questions on, or before I move on to the details, anybody else got any questions of anything I've addressed so far?
I'll just add, so when this is being piloted in a lot of places right now, specifically in the deployed environment, we've been able to obtain things like their business rules for how the staff functions, what we would typically call an organization and staff functions manual. But you look through their business rules and how they do business, and it varies, as I read it, my own personal opinion, it varies from, wow, that's interesting, like, that could be really cool, to, yeah, that's not going to work. So the one thing that I'll tell you is that I fully expect as this gets implemented, people are going to step on each other's toes. Squadron commanders are going to feel like their authority is being stepped on. A staff members are going to feel like they're being passed around. It's going to be a lot of problem. And I'll tell you, our functionals in the units are going to feel like they're telling two people at the same time. That they have to communicate an issue or a matter to both their commander, their squadron commander, and the A staff that's responsible for the action. There's a lot of duplication of effort when I look through those business rules. And that means people are going to have a new norm to learn, and it's going to be hard. And people are going to make mistakes, and some people might get a little stressed, etc. It's normal when you're dealing with this level of change. But again, we don't know all the details. Colonel Priest asked about one. The one thing that I'll say is the Guard Bureau has told us that there's no intention to remove any rank structure as a part of this initiative, nor to reduce a wing's in strength. How that plays out, we're not sure. Where do the group senior enlisted leader authorizations go? Where do those chiefs go? We don't know the answers to those questions yet, so time will tell.
Sir. All right, starting with the details. I'd like to point out here that these desired experiences are based on a plan order from 2023. They don't necessarily align with some of the guidance we received as far as you'll see here in a minute. Some of the experience requirements are to be a past graduated commander. Well, a lot of them are 04 positions. How many commanders that are graduated are still in 04? So just keep that in mind when I'm going through this. So your chief of staff provides your A staff with intent, guidance, and direction. He also ensures the wing commander's intent is implemented, and he formulates staff policies and liaises with higher headquarters. Then they work closely with the squadron commanders to define and refine all the requirements. Any questions on chief of staff? All right, the deputy ensures the staff is properly trained and equipped. They maintain routine oversight of the wing readiness reporting. They coordinate the air staff taskings, and they backfill the chief of staff when needed. They also focus on the air staff's evaluations, decorations, and performance management functions. Any questions on the deputy? All right, the the A1 that is. That's your primary advisor for manpower, personnel, services, education and training, equal opportunity, and your airman and family readiness. They advise and assist the wing commander in determining the manpower and organizational requirements. They are advocating for resources to bridge the gaps in manpower, services, and personnel. They report the per stat to the wing commander and Howard headquarters as needed. They calculate requirements for food and service support. They're drafting, codifying, executing bed down support to personnel, and they ensure that the PERSCO teams are complying with casualty reporting requirements. Again, keep in mind that these are all your deployed functions. Any questions on A1? All right. A2 is primary advisor for intelligence. They're responsible for all wing-wide intelligence. They work with the squadron intel to address any readiness shortfalls. They're advocating for your resources for the intel community. They're managing and executing the Wing Intel Oversight Program, and they report the status of their intel capabilities, the Wing's intel capabilities. They also ensure the Wing personnel are prepared for agile combat operations. Any questions on A2? All right, your A3, that's your primary advisor for direction and control of the Wing operational forces. They serve as a primary focal point for organizing and executing the Wing support to the exercises and operations. They are your senior airfield authority. They coordinate, monitor, and report all operational missions to the Wing. This includes flying, protection, any kind of DOM ops we are supporting, any kind of other operational mission we are doing in the Wing. They issue and update appropriate orders as necessary to execute local theater assigned tasks and missions. They report current operations, the operation status to the Wing commanders. Any questions on the A3?
I see your suggested rank says Lieutenant Colonel. Your chart earlier said Major.
Yes, sir. That's why I mentioned earlier that when the Guard Bureau sent the 20 positions down, they just sent what ranks were already assigned to some positions. So the A5 has 05, but we do have the ability to move that over. Yeah, we can move it around, sir. Yes, sir. They're kind of paused with the MCRs when all this is concerned, because they're still trying to figure out what the DCWs are going to look like. All right, any other questions with A3? All right, your A4 is your primary advisor for logistics and sustainment support. They're collecting, analyzing, and providing key information across maintenance, munitions, logistics, transportation, fuel, supply, and civil engineering functions. It's a big task for one guy, or one person that is, but it's a lot. So you have your CE, and your maintenance, and your logistics. It's kind of like 3-in-1 there. And they're providing your logistics support to the A3. They're the functionary manager for the logistics UTCs. They're overseeing the War Reserve material. They're executing the tip FID. They're integrating policy and plans for civil engineering functions, and they provide CE support to the operational planning. And they also are overseeing your contracting forces. Any questions with the A4?
Sir. A couple of quick questions. One being, previous slide had mentioned the preferred AFSC was 21R. So if someone were to come from the maintenance or CE career field and aspire to be in that position, would they need to take the 21R tech school to be qualified to be in that A4 director role?
Great question.
Great question, and I don't have an exact answer for you. I know some of these positions are coming down. They got like 5 or 6 AFCs associated with them, but my guess is right now, maybe not, but maybe so. So I'll have to get back to you on that one.
I would expect some type of waiver process, but who knows right now. But that is a great question, and it's an open-ended one for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my follow-on question would be, each of these has a training and education preferred course. So things like this JPME one course, where would that the training resources from that come from? Would that be?
So your JPEME 1 is your Air Command Staff College. Yeah, so that's why, going back to what I said earlier about this being the coming out of the plan award from 2023, it kind of doesn't align with what ranks we were given so far, because usually if you're done with JPME 1, you're already going to be a lieutenant colonel, or you're a lieutenant colonel already. So.
Sorry, I mistakenly think that was joint planning. There's a course down at Maxwell.
Now they do have a lot of suggested courses and training education for a lot of the A-staff positions. There's a whole big book of preferred classes they want you to take once you're assigned. So the funding would for those would be either unit or school funded, depending on which course it is. Yep. Any other questions before we move on? All right, the A5 is your primary person in charge of the wing plans. They develop the wing and tactical plans. They're your lesson learned manager. They validate the wing support for planned force flow, bed down, and redeployment. They perform duties as an operational planner, and they are your primary office of responsibility, along with the IG, for planning and execution of the wing level exercises to include with special emphasis on the readiness exercises. So any flares or exercises we got going forward, the A5 would be involved with in coordination with the IG office. IG's back there. Any questions on the A5? All right, and finally the A6 is your primary advisor for communications and information technology. They're facilitating coordination with any theater, defense-wide, commercial, and multinational communication systems, activities, and functions. They formulate your courses of action to counter emerging threats to communication, and they're providing your primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency communication plan. They also provide functional oversight to the communication units assigned to the wing commander. Any questions on the A6? All right, again, these are the references I mentioned earlier. The biggest one to know here is this Air National Guard A-Staff Guidebook. And that's the guidebook that they recently published with everything that they expect A-Staff to be doing initially for preparation. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. With the two wings being merged, and when one eventually goes downrange to, say, set up a bare bones place, A-Staff is going to be picked from both of the wings.
Yes.
Does that mean that the ones that are left has to perform their primary task for both of those wings?
So the ones left behind home station?
Yes, sir.
They'll be supporting whoever the Air Base Unit Commander is back home in that A-Staff there. Because if you remember back to the breakout here, each wing has their own Air Base Unit that stays behind. And they have their own A-Staff. Well, that's not a full A-Staff like the Deployable Combat Wing A-Staff. That's going to be a smaller A-Staff. So whatever these A-Staff members left behind are, they'll be supporting that, whoever that commander left behind. Good question.
Hey,
Sir?
on that same vein, Vic, have you given any thought to how, so when the combat wing commander doesn't go with the deployed combat wing, and they're left in garrison, how do they integrate, or what's that relationship like between them and the Air Base Unit?
Going back to the Air National Guard Combat Wing concept, they're envisioning that one base, one wing. So this base is one wing, and that Air Base Unit is subordinate to the Deployed Combat Wing Commander. So whoever this DCW, if the DCW stays behind, the Air Base Unit Commander still reports to them. That's my understanding of it. I could be wrong. And again, this is all pre-decisional.
I mean, if you're the wing commander, you're the wing commander.
Yeah.
If you deploy, then you know someone is appointed, whether it's the Air Base Command Element, Commander, etc. But you know, when you're the wing commander, you're the wing commander.
Yeah. And the active...
And again, that's why we do temporary G-series orders. That's why we do those things, so that the command relationship is clear.
Thank you, sir. And the active Air Force, their bases are going to look like, they're going to have two wings one base, two wings instead of one base, one wing. So the active force is going to have a deployable combat wing and air base wing. So, because the intent behind the active force is that their whole DCW is going to deploy and support the mission while the air base wing is still operating the base. But, with the Air Guard, we don't have that luxury because we don't have, 2,000 people on a base. We just have 1,000, 1,200 roughly. Actually, I think we have less than 1,000 assigned right now. So, any other questions? Oh, go back to the references. So you see here some joint publications. Those are some really good regulations or policy that you need to be reading. It explains how the joint world expects the staffs to be operating. I think this 3.33 is a big one, and it outlines the JSTAF organization. You notice here that the 38101 is rapidly becoming outdated. That's because as they add the A staff, they're adding these DCWs, that whole thing is probably going to be thrown in trash and redone. But it's good to know that that's where all your unit organization is. So when I say keep up with what's going on, that's one that you can keep watching to make sure and see what they're doing with the wing organizations. Any other questions? Go ahead.
How do we integrate with the active and the reserve components?
So my understanding of it right now is that we're supposed to just partner with the other unit and deploy and operate that main operating base wherever it may be.
Another Air National Guard unit.
Yes, with another Air National Guard unit. It's not going to be integrating with the active duty because they have, like I said before, they have one base, two wings. So that DCW, those 1,000 people are going to deploy as a wing over to the main operating base. So we're going to take 300 to 500 each and deploy and operate a main operating base in the middle Pacific somewhere.
There's some functions, though, that we don't have in the Air National Guards. Pest management, thinking CE specific, so we would need active duty to support some of those things.
You're entirely correct. And if you go to a large facility, a large installation that's more of a fixed installation, not so much of a, some of the ones they're envisioning for these smaller islands, you're absolutely correct. I mean, if we deploy as a deploy combat wing to Guam, what does that relationship look like? And it's going to be situational. It's going to have to be. But you're right, there are capabilities like security's talked about, UAV defense, right? That's not something that you guys have equipment for right now. If we have a Patriot battery system or Patriot battery that's deployed with us, that's probably going to be an Army entity. There's a lot of capabilities we would need in that environment that we would not necessarily have. A lot of that's going to be situational.
Yeah.
I just don't think there's any other way around it.
And I fully expect if we do go through these islands, the A staff will be integrating a lot with the J staff there because there'll be some Navy probably support there. We'll have to integrate with the Navy staff. We'll have to integrate with any Army staff that may be operating these Patriot missiles and so on.
So I'll wrap up here. Thank you, Vic, because I know we're right up against our time. But the one thing that I will leave you with is, think about how this might be put into practice. So if we have a large staff meeting, Wing Commander has a large staff meeting, if he has his A3 present, his DCOM for operations present, and the Airlift Squadron Commander present, if he has a question about the flying schedule, who's he asking? I don't know. That will come down to business rules and the situation at play. If the wing commander has his A4 present, the base civil engineer or CE commander present, as well as deputy commander for sustainment, and the air base commander, and he has a question about a facility, who's he asking the question to? And who's the one that's responding? What do our meetings look like in the future? Who's in the room? Who's not? There's a lot of questions to be answered, and a lot of that will come down to, again, the development of what I call an organizations and functions manual. That's something we're very used to on the joint staff, but also business rules. And we will have to get used to a new norm in that particular environment. So the devil's in the details, and we don't have a lot of details yet. We have an aspirational concept, and it presents a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties. But the last thing that I'll leave you with is I have no doubt of our airmen's ingenuity and our airmen's ability to remain flexible, to adapt appropriately, to embrace this new structure, to struggle, to challenge, to experience some stress, but to ultimately figure it out and to implement a new way of doing business that might be completely foreign to the way that we've operated in the past, but is ultimately better and position us better for great power competition. So I'll leave you with that. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to stick around. I'll take them all day long. Vic will stick around. We'll do our best to answer them, but respectful of your time, thank you all for coming. You all have a good day.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about the 130th Airlift Wing, you can find us online at www.130aw.ang.af.mil. If you have questions about this program or the 130th, you can contact us by email at 130.aw.public.affairs@us.af.mil.